Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to today's episode of Leap with Jackpot. On this episode, I'm going to be talking about internship process. I'm going to be introducing my story behind the internship that I had, and we're also going to talk about the application process and relocations, and just give you a general backdrop of why an internship is very important. So I'm going to start out with telling you about the designated school official. So when you applied for your application and when you applied for your visa, you got what was called an I-20 form. An I-20 form is a document that just outlines the requirements of you as a student. So one of the things that you would notice is the I-20 form came from someone from within the school, and that person is called the designated school official. The DSO is really an office that was set up after the September 11 attacks, where they wanted to be able to track students. But remember that the attacks involved people going to flight school. They didn't initially come in for flight school. They were able to just proceed to flight school. So this is a way of tracking students, essentially. So, and the school DSO is one of the most important persons to the international student. They're essentially your immigration supervisor, someone that oversees everything. You cannot travel out of the country without getting a signature from your DSO. You cannot get your social security number if you don't have a write-off from your DSO. Of course, the internship is also very important because the DSO needs to give you what they call a CPT. But we'll get to all of that. But put it in front of your mind, on the back of your mind, that your DSO is the most important person. They're the ones that track your status in school. So an example would be if you were to resume school and you decide not to go to class. Your DSO would mark in the system. So they have the student exchange visit information system, where they have to, every semester or quarter, they have to update the system to say, this person is in school, these are the classes that they're taking, and they are still in status. So your DSO, if you're not close to them for them to track you, they'll mark you as out of status. So you have to be very careful to ensure that you keep a good relationship with your DSO. Don't do things outside. Don't say, oh, this is how other people have done it. You will get in trouble. If your DSO does not sign off, you will get in trouble. One of such many rules is before you do an internship in the US, you have to spend 2 semesters minimum. So if you're in a semester system, you have to spend 2 semesters. If you're in a quarter system, you have to spend, I believe it's 3 quarters. So 3 quarters make a full year for people that go to school that run a quarter system. And for people that go to school that run a semester system, you have to spend 2 semesters. If you do not spend 2 semesters, you cannot get authorization from your DSO to go to school. There is no way around it. So there's nothing like, oh, but I know someone that did it this way. No, it doesn't work like that. You're not going to get authorization because the rules are the rules. So another thing with respect to internships is you need to find out from your department if they allow you to go on internship. So naturally you would have expected, why would the school not allow me to go on internship? It is because internships are supposed to form part of your experience for grad school. So one of the things that you'll probably hear is an internship an integral requirement for me to graduate? So when you go on internships, it's actually like taking a class. So you have to register for a class, which means that you have to provide some form of report after your internship. So you should find out from your school and your department, do you allow students to go on internship? The reason why I'm saying this is because I had this problem. When I wanted to go on internship, the designated school official looked me in the eye and said, I don't believe an internship forms a core requirement for your graduation. That she needed a letter from the department stating, yes, we want this student to go on internship because it forms part of his requirements for graduation. And they had to make the documentation available, and then she had to essentially, agree to that. And the reason why DSOs do that is to watch their own back. DSOs have to recertify after a period of time. So they want to make sure that they themselves are following the guidelines so that when something happens and there's some request for evidence from the USCIS, they would be able to provide documentary evidence to say, yes, the student is allowed to go on internship because the department says they are allowed to go on internship. So be aware. Now, for internships, what you typically get is a CPT. It's curriculum practical training. It means that as part of your graduate program, you are allowed to go on an internship to learn something. So that is the status you get. So your CPT can be 3 months, 6 months, and up to 11 months and 29 days, I think. Or 11 months and... So basically, you can do just below 12 months for CPT. I will have another episode to talk about CPT Day 1 and why you shouldn't do it, but not in this episode. For this episode, CPT means that you get 3 months off from school in the summer. School is off in the summer to go and work at a chosen company. There are internships that run in other semesters and in other quarters as well. I'll probably not dwell on that. I'll probably, if you reach out to me, to discuss this, I might be able to give you some more insights. But typically, internships run in the summer. I have seen people that run internships in January, in the spring, for the entire spring. So that is also something you can do. However, remember again, the DSO has to give you the sign-off. So as long as you have the DSO signing off on your documentation saying this person can go, you can go on internship. You can also extend your internship. Even though I don't believe it's a good idea to extend your internship beyond 3 months, there's one reason why I think it's a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. It's psychologically a bad idea because once you get used to working in industry, you might not want to go back and complete your program. So your primary aim is to always make sure that I came here on an international student visa. I need to complete this program that brought me here. So because the job will always be there. So put it in mind. So you need to understand, that process. So what are the challenges that you face as an international student when finding work? So one of the things that you would face is the most interesting question that they always ask. And that question is this: would you now or in future require visa sponsorship? The answer is always yes. You will always require visa sponsorship, even though you have a CPT, a work authorization to work for that 3 months. The reason why they ask that is a HR question. You will at some point require some form of sponsorship. So always ensure you answer that. So the problem you would usually face is that not all companies understand international student immigration. So you need to make sure that you apply to companies that specifically caters for international students. So usually I'm in tech, so the big companies understand the immigration process for international students. So the Google, the Facebook, the Microsoft, the Nvidias, the Apples, they all know, they all have department, they all have lawyers, legal representation to help you through the process. So typically what I advise is stick to the companies that know how the immigration system works. There are some smaller companies that will still take you on for CPT. Sometimes you might have to explain to them the process. So be aware of that. But I typically would advise that you stick to the big boys, the big companies. Is usually very helpful. So that's some of the challenges, that you have to be very selective in the kind of companies you can apply to. There are lots of companies out there. So, even being selective, you're going to hit a wide range of people. The next thing is regarding the search. How do you find these internship opportunities? So one of the things that I usually tell people is, once you get into the US, once you are able to, settle down and start classes, know this: you are going to graduate, and you're going to graduate most probably in good time. Your next efforts should be placed in getting an internship. Looking for work is a full-time job in itself. So what do? Make sure you go for conferences. If you're in tech and you want to take advantage of the conferences that are available to you, make sure you register to become a member of the National Society of Black Engineers, NSBE. I cannot emphasize this enough. It is paramount that you register yourself for this conference at all costs. Doesn't matter if you have the money or if you don't have the money, just make sure you go for the conference. Do not make a mistake of not going for this conference. The conference happens every March of every year. This is just before the summer. So the reason why it's strategically placed that way is because so you can take advantage of getting an offer just before summer. The second thing I would advise is that you make sure you go for the career fairs that are held on your campuses. So there are campuses that have career fairs that bring in companies. They are usually done every semester. So there's one in the fall, there's one in the spring. They'll bring companies. Make sure you register to go for that. There's a website there's a platform called Handshake that is connected to the University Resource Center, and most companies place their jobs on there, and that is also connected to your school email, and they usually put you on those mailing lists and send you jobs. If you have to upload your resume on Handshake so that the companies can see you. So remember, these are two sets of things I've just said. The first one is Handshake, which is on campus. The other one is NSBE, which is a national conference which you do outside of campus. So the first one you need to do is, as soon as you get on campus and you start classes, do the first career fair. You are not eligible to go on internships yet, but however, you need to understand the psychology of applying and the psychology of doing interviews, because it's an art. Interview is an art. It's an art and a science. So you have to be able to understand the way the interviews are done, how interviews are done. You need to also understand what the requirements are like, the psychology of interviewing, the pressure of interviewing. Everything needs to go into this. So get onto Handshake. It's usually on campus. Make sure you do that. The next thing you need to do is to ensure that you register as a member of NSBE. So what that does for you is that you're able to then apply to go for the national conference. Please go for the national conference. It is very paramount that you do it. So for my experience, I registered as a member. The moment I got into the US, I made that application. Applied to be a member. I joined. Once I joined, I then looked out for the conference. I went in 2016. The conference was in Boston. One thing you should also understand is that you need to plan properly. You can use Airbnb. You can use a hotel to know where you're going to stay. I would advise that you go in groups so you can save yourself some money. So that's what I did. So that happened in 2016. Another conference that is maybe not always looked at is the SWE, Society of Women Engineers. Now, hearing this, men might think I'm not eligible to go for a women's conference. Please do. I know one or two people that have gotten offers from a women conference. There's no discrimination. Also, remember I mentioned National Society of Black Engineers. it's not all black people that'll be at the conference. They're going to be white, Latino, Indian. It's open to everybody. So it's just that the organization is called that, but they do not discriminate. You're not allowed to discriminate. This is the US. People are allowed to come in for conferences. So another thing that you need to do is to carry out applications online on LinkedIn. So I did about maybe 500 applications. So I arrived in August. By December, I had hit about 500 applications. I would advise that you get a resume rewriter because you're coming in from another country. You need to know how to tailor your resume to fit the US. The good thing since 2016 that I've done mine is you don't need to pay anyone anymore. You can simply pay for a premium version of ChatGPT, which is what I use now. And, back then there was no ChatGPT, but you can essentially use ChatGPT to rewrite your resume to fit a particular job description. So make sure you have an idea of what kind of job description you want to do, and stick that into ChatGPT. Drop in your resume. I need to, curate it and rewrite it for you. So what was my experience getting an internship? So for me, when I applied to go to the conference, I got an email saying that they were allowing us to upload our resumes prior to the interviews. Prior to the conference. So I did upload my resume. And one thing I immediately noticed was they were calling, I got a call, they were calling people, and I got a call from Intel. So Intel reached out to me and said, hey, we saw your resume, we like what we see, are you coming for the conference? And I said, yes, of course. And he says, do you really want to work for Intel? It's like, of course, of course I want to work for Intel, I'm looking for work. And they said, all right, great, that I should come to the conference. So one advantage that gave me was I already had a predetermined interview for myself. So it was easy to go in there with less pressure. So that's one advantage you would get. Make sure you look out for that email after you register for the conference. Watch out for that email that asks you to upload your resume. Keep applying. Reach out to the companies that will be coming. So I uploaded my resume to the portal. I got a call from one Intel team, and I did another interview with another Intel team when I got there. I was scheduled for an on-site interview over 2 days. And my interview was mostly behavioral. So there are usually two types of interviews you do: technical interviews and behavioral interviews. Sometimes the technical interviews will just be to go over what your resume has stated. Other times it's just to ensure that you can actually write the code. They give you a whiteboard, they give you coding questions and things like that. For my experience, all I did was simply a behavioral question. So the behavioral questions, you need to learn how to master behavioral questions. One technique is by using the STAR system. So the STAR system is S for situation, T for task, A for action, and R for results. And how do you answer that? So that when they ask you a question, tell me about a time where you solved an optimization problem or a time where you led. So you'd give them a situation and say, hey, there was a situation X, pick the picture, then tell them the task that you carried out. Hey, I did X and Y. Tell them the actions that you took, and then give them the results. And what the STAR method tries to do is to show how much impact that you did based on the situation. So understand that's how it works. So for the coding interviews, for the on-site coding and the whiteboarding sessions, you will need to prepare. Just ensure that you have covered the basics. So you need to know what DFS and BFS, you need to know your usual stacks and queues, algorithms, and data structures. You can use Algo Expert, HackerRank, or LeetCode to practice this, and you should take your time. Easily a number of months. So when you get in August, use like 3 months to prepare for the your LeetCode, or while you're going to classes, and to ensure that you're ready for that. Interesting thing that happened at Nesby was I had interviews over 2 days, and I had 2 offers from 2 different teams, One of the team was in Oregon and the other team was in a place called Santa Clara. I didn't know where that was. I was expecting to see, hey, where's Silicon Valley? Newsflash, Silicon Valley is the nickname of the place. There is no such place called Silicon Valley in California. It's just a nickname given to the place. More on that later. But that was my experience in getting to be interviewed. So after doing back-to-back about over 2 days, I think I did about 6 or 7 interviews. I cannot remember, with multiple teams, repeating myself most of the time. After the first day, one of the ways I knew that I was going to get an offer was HR sent me an email saying I should fill up this form for a background check. So that was good. Once you get to that point, they send you a background check. And I filled the forms. Once the forms were done, I got a call from HR saying that I had been given an offer. And the typical salaries of interns is they pay you like you were working full-time. So you would get typically between $5,000 to $8,000 a month. And this is usually paid every 2 weeks. So you get paid every 2 weeks. Now, this was Texas. I lived in Texas at this time, and I was supposed to move over to California. This is not a time when there was work from home. You had to be there. The beauty about it is they paid for my relocation to California, and they also offered, I think that's all they offered. They offered me a relocation package, which I took. So I, filled up my details, and they wired me them funds. I, transported my car over to California. But this was what got very interesting. I was so excited about how much I was earning, and I said, well, cost of living can't be that bad. It's California. And I placed a call to the realtors, to some apartment complex, and I wanted to get a place. Now, to give you context, where I was staying, I was paying $500 a month, I think. I was plus bills. I said it couldn't be that bad. So I gave a call to someone, and I said, I'm trying to rent a place in California. The numbers I'm seeing online seem very, very weird. And, I was seeing $3,000 for, like, who pays $3,000, $4,000 a month for one bedroom? I'm paying $500 here. And I remember speaking to a lady, and I said, hey, I'm trying to look for a place. And she goes, how much is the budget? And I said, $1,500. $1,500 is $1,500. And she busted out laughing on the phone. She said, you're not going to find a place in the entire place at that price. So be aware of where you're going. You have to make plans. How are you going to get to where you're going? If you're flying, good. If you're driving, be aware of the requirements of the area you're going to. Reach out to, if you have friends in the area, that's very good. You can, talk to them to find you places to stay. They're typically, everyone's on their own, so you have to fend for yourself. So don't rely on staying with someone. So for me, I reached out to a company, and I was able to get a 1-bedroom, all expenses paid, and I paid $2,400 a month. Yes, I paid $2,400 for a 1-bedroom. It was small, but it would cover everything. But I essentially wanted to be self-reliant. I didn't want to rely on people. So also, secondly, you need to make sure that you let the department know you're not going to be around for the summer. The reason why, because sometimes professors usually look for students that want to do some work over the summer. So tell them you're not going to be available. 3, most importantly, you need to take your offer letter to your DSO, to your designated school official, where they will update your I-20 with where you're going to be working. They're going to have to put in the name of the company in there, and they're going to print out a brand new I-20 that you should not misplace, and you need to sign it, and then you need to take that with you to your job. Please make sure you clarify with the companies that they take international students. If you do not do this, you will end up resuming at the place, and when you are about to do your I-9 verification and they ask you to bring the documents, your work authorization documents, and you produce the documentation that isn't required, they will kick you out. I have seen it happen. So make sure you clarify that, hey, I am an international student. I am going to be working with the CPT. I'm going to be getting an authorization from my school DSO? Is that appropriate? Most likely they will say yes if it's a company that deals with international students. If it's a company that does not deal with them, they will have no clue what to do during I-9. So what is I-9? I-9 is how they verify that you are able to work in the US. So when you come in and you put it out there saying, hey, I'm here to start on you have to do it on your first day. Everybody does this. So this is not just an international student thing. Americans, green card holders, everybody do I-9 verification at mostly the big companies. So you will bring in your I-20, you will bring in all the documents they want, your I-20, your social security number, form of IDs, two forms of ID. So you will take your international passport, you will take your driver's license, you take your social security card, you will take your I-20. You will go to an I-9 place where they will take your document and they will validate you for the period that has been validated for your internship. So you cannot go beyond 3 months or whatever agreed time it is. If you must go beyond 3 months, you have to let your DSO know. Your DSO has to do another I-20 for you. You have to do your I-9 all over again. It's very important. This is immigration. It's very tricky, so it's, pay attention. Very, very tricky. So that's in terms of logistics. Also, in terms of logistics and academics, you have to register for a class in your school. So make sure you're registered in for a class to ensure that you are in good status. If you do not, and you go off, you might be in trouble legally, immigration-wise. So what was my internship experience like? I worked with a team that did performance analysis. My role was a characterization and performance software engineer. I had no clue what that meant. So one of the things I want to explain in this segment of my internship experience is please be open. You would come with a typical mindset of I want to write software, I want to do this. Different companies do different things. This is an internship. It's an opportunity for you to learn. So take up any advantage that you see. So what does performance analysis do? So typically, that a CPU runs a piece of task in a certain time frame or does an amount of work over a period of time. And that volume of work is what you would calculate. So there are various metrics you track. The various metrics that you track is the character of that piece of code. So that's where characterization comes from. An example, Cinebench is a benchmark that you run. And when I say benchmark, which is a piece of code, a piece of work, Cinebench is a benchmark that if you increase the number of cores, so if you have 2 cores, 4 cores, 6 cores, 8 cores, if you increase the number of cores, the performance of Cinebench goes up. So that's what my company was tracking. And essentially what they were trying to do was, if we are building new CPUs, we need to know how they're behaving with industry standards. So most of these benchmarks mimic real world activities, and what they're trying to do is just try and understand if the CPU that is being designed is matching the outcome of what they expect. And my role was to write internal tools that help track these performances. I was able to help automate some of the manual tasks involved in the steps. So most of them were Excel, so I was able to change some of them. My manager, my biggest highlight of my internship was my manager, Dr. Justin Mitchell. He remains a very good friend and a mentor to date. He was the one that thoroughly guided me during my internship. So make sure you keep that internship mentor. Dr. Justin, I will interview him in a future episode where he would come talk about what he looks out for in interns, so that will help you to see things from the eye of a manager. But he was instrumental in me getting a full-time job, so I was able to go back to Intel as a full-time software engineer. I'll discuss that at a later date on the steps of doing full-time. But I highlight this to make sure you have to be open to learning. You have to have a mentor. It's very, very important. And one of the skills that I gained from this was I had a profound experience I had a profile in I now understood profoundly how the industry worked. I understood the trajectory of things. I ended up working on, checking out the competition and how things worked. So it gave me a good understanding of where the direction of the industry was going. And one of the things that I really also saw was I met people. I was able to network with people. I was able to meet other engineers who had been there. I met a principal engineer who was Nigerian who had been there 30 years, easily. I think he's been there since the 90s. And he's a principal engineer. He built a ton of tools and a ton of CPUs for Intel. He remains a mentor till date. I need to reach out to him as well, probably bring him up on an episode of Leap with Jackpot. And it influenced my career. Now my full career is anything that has to do with performance is what I do. Any tool that I write has to do with performance. It's the only work I really enjoy. So when I write in software now, I put it in the back of my mind, how does this deal in terms of performance? Is this scaling with CPU? Is it memory bound? Is it CPU bound? How do you fight the contention? When the program is running very slow, I'm able to debug it because now I understand from a performance perspective how it works. So that's one of the things that this has really, really brought to me. In summary, this has been a good explanation, an interesting explanation on my internship journey at Intel. And this forms a concrete part of how hopefully this would help people in understanding the expectations of an internship and to help them to craft their future experiences. I hope this has been very helpful. Reach out to me if you have any questions about your internship journey. This would be very grateful. This would be very helpful for other people. And I hope this would serve as a runway to help you land your own internship. And I hope this would, thoroughly guide you. I'm really grateful that you listened thus far. I hope that your US experience would keep birthing beautiful, beautiful dreams. I'm thoroughly grateful that I am, embarking on this podcast journey with you and that you are listening to me. I thank you very much for your support. I thank you very much for your encouraging words. And I hope that you can, check out our social media. Next episodes would be around, the next episode would be around our April interview series. You just concluded your March series. You would start the April series, and I hope that every end of the series that I'll give you more insights like this at the end of every of the interview series. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. This is Saheed signing out. Thank you very much. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Leap with Jackpot. I hope it brought you valuable insights and stories that resonate with your journey. If you have any thoughts to share, questions, or want to send a voice note with your feedback, please visit our website at leapwithjackpot.io. You will find a contact from there. I would love to hear from you and feature your voice in a future episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform, some of which are Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or Player FM. Your subscriptions and reviews help us grow and reach more listeners, and I truly appreciate each one of them. Also, check out our merch store on leapwithjackpot.io website for some cool t-shirts and hoodies. Perfect for showing your support for the show. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll dive even deeper into the experiences and challenges of international education and careers. Until then, keep leaping forward, and thanks again for being part of the Leap with Jackpot community.